Dr. Acton, who has done such a phenomenal job, just signed an Ohio Health Director's order. Dr. Acton just signed a stay-at-home order for all Ohioans.
Who really made the decision to lock down the state of Ohio? The answer might seem obvious. Governor DeWine, with the help of the amazing Amy Acton. Is that really the whole story? I don't think so. The real answer to that question involves a secret, but it's kind of a Where's Waldo? It's a secret that's hiding in plain sight. Have you spotted it yet? If you're like me, it's been a while now that you've known in your gut that something's up. This is bigger than what you're led to believe. I'm going to challenge you to hang in there with me. I'm going to go through some of the things that I've discovered that I never thought that I'd be interested in just a few short months ago. But I want to ask you to hang in there, because I cannot connect all the dots. I can't cross all the T's, but we can cover a lot of ground together. And I think you'll be glad that you did, as we answer the question, who really made the decision to lock down the state of Ohio? But before we get into this too far, let's just review a little bit and remind ourselves just how big of a decision this was. As of late May, there's been more than 1 million unemployment claims filed. That's 20% of the workforce. Are the kids going to have school in the fall? Will they go back for 1 day, 2 days, 5 days? Will they have to wear masks? Will there be normal 4th of July and other type of celebrations this year? Kings Island is closed. The Ohio State Fair is closed. By the way, a lot of businesses are closed permanently. We now have contact tracers. How long are they going to be with us? And don't forget the goon squad that goes around bars and restaurants undercover to see if they're in compliance. But you better not talk about that or you might get censored, which, oh, by the way, you're used to. Something you weren't used to before. You know what censorship is. It happens to you. It happens to your friends. Oh, and we had an election that was canceled, that was altered by our health director. And speaking of elections, we've got one coming up in the fall. Is that safe? Is that in play? Remember, Ohio was the first domino in this lockdown phenomena that we've seen in the country. Was that intentional, or was that just by accident? We know that it caught the attention of a lot of people across the country. It even caught the attention and garnered praise from none other than Bill Gates. Are we living in a new normal?
This is a new normal.
Remember the story of Hansel and Gretel? That's the one where they left the trail of breadcrumbs through the woods. They were hoping that somebody would follow that trail of breadcrumbs and it would lead them to the cabin where they were being held to be fattened up by the wicked witch that was going to have them for dinner. Well, for me, that trail of breadcrumbs begins in an interview, the first national interview I saw with Mike DeWine and Amy Acton on the Tucker Carlson show. I believe it was March 12th. I'm going to play the clip in its entirety. And if you listen close, there's enough clues in that clip that it'll get us started on the trail to answer the question, who really made the decision to lock down the state of Ohio? Let's give it a listen.
Mike DeWine is the governor of Ohio. We're happy to have him tonight, along with Dr. Amy Acton, who's the director of the Ohio Department of Health. Thanks to you both. Are you confident in this number?
Well, it's an estimate, and Dr. Acton can explain a lot better than I do. I'm not great in science, but we rely on people like Dr. Acton, who's my health director, but we've also had a panel of 14 doctors who we rely on to make these decisions, and Dr. Acton has also, and I have reached out to some other national experts. So what we do know is that there's a lot of people in Ohio who would test positive if that test was done. And again, Dr. Acton can do the science better than I can do. I'll guarantee you that.
Okay, so that's Mike DeWine. Let's look at his answer. First of all, he says it's an estimate. He says, we don't know, but if we tested, we would know. So let me ask you a question. You bought a brand new car 2 months later, you hear a strange noise under the hood. So you go to the dealership, and then a little bit later, the service manager comes out and says, you need a brand new engine. And you say, have you run any tests? Have you run any diagnostics? No. But if we did, we know how they would come out. You need a new engine. Are you going to do that? I don't think so. Then he mentions Dr. Acton is a lot better at this than me. He says Dr. Acton 4 times in 60 seconds. What is up with his fascination with this woman? But then he says, I'm not that great at science. So he sounds like that New Jersey governor that when he was asked about the Constitution said, well, that's above my pay grade. I mean, you're supposed to know these things, Mike DeWine, if you're making a decision, aren't you? You sound like the guy that just walked out of the finance office at the car dealership where you bought your car. You know you signed a bunch of paperwork, but you don't know what you signed. Does he really sound like he's on top of the facts and he's done a lot of due diligence and made a decision, or does he sound like he's just along for the ride, or maybe he's been sold something? I don't know. He doesn't sound like he's in command. Then he mentions Dr. Acton again, and then he mentions this panel of 14 doctors. Well, who are these doctors? What are their names? And where do they fit in? Then he mentions Dr. Acton again, and then he mentions these national experts that he's talked to, and bingo, that's where the breadcrumb trail begins. This is where the deep dive really starts, and once we start going down that trail, you're going to find some things that you're not going to like. But I've got a couple of questions about these experts that he consulted. Who are these people? What are their names? Who pays them? Who do they work for? Who are they aligned with? How accurate have they been in the past? Has anything they've ever done actually harmed people? Do they have a vested interest in things turning out a certain way? Do they have anything to gain from the country moving in the direction that they've suggested that we move in? Do they own any patents on viruses or on vaccinations? Have they already given assurances to other parties or entities as to how they will speak and how they will act in a situation such as this? Do they have any political affiliations that might influence what they say? And here's the biggest one of all. Is their allegiance to the best interests of the United States, or does it lie elsewhere? But now Mike is ready to pivot and pass the ball over to Dr. Acton, and let's see what she has to say.
Yes. 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 So, you know, Tucker, we know that we don't know the exact number of Ohioans because we really haven't been able to test, and we don't yet have the exact models that will tell us. Because, you know, we weren't able to test till this Monday we had our first case. So what we did is we looked around at the models that exist, and it turned out, you know, some of the best people, the people who actually created the epidemic curve, the flattening the curve that we're all talking about, those are people we've consulted with just to really understand the model. And, you know, some of the best people, the people who actually created the epidemic curve, the flattening the curve that we're all talking about, those are people we've consulted with just to really understand the model.
I don't know about y'all, but man, this lady really ruins a really good cup of coffee. I mean, I'm down here, I gotta bang my head against the wall. But let's try to break down what she said. She said, okay, Tucker, we know that we don't actually know, but what we do know is we assume. Okay, so you don't know, but what you do know is you assume. That sounds scientific, doesn't it?
So, you know, Tucker, we know that we don't know the exact number of Ohioans because we really have. But what we did know is we assumed community spread already because...
I don't think so. So what she's doing is she's getting a microbit of data. She's putting it into somebody's computer model, that really accurate computer model. Look at the bottom of the screen that says there's 100,000 cases in the state of Ohio, and it's doubling every 6 days. Well, here by the end of May, that means we've got 29 million cases of coronavirus in a state that only has 11 million. And at that time, they were talking about a 3% mortality rates, which means that we have 900,000 people dead in the state of Ohio. And these are the experts that she's all excited about. So basically, you have Mike DeWine deferring to Amy Acton, who's deferring to whoever in Washington or whatever. They're telling her what to say. They're telling her how to act on television, and you and I get the shaft. What she's doing is extrapolating a tiny bit of data and trying to forecast for the whole nation. But just a few weeks later, when there was a real doctor from California that had actually performed 5,000 plus tests and took those results and compared it to results from Sweden and from other parts of the world and other parts of the country, what happened? He was excoriated, driven off of YouTube, and censored all over the place.
What is materializing in the state of California is 12% positives. That means you have a 0.03 chance of dying from COVID-19 in the state of California. And as we move through this data, what I want you to see is millions of cases, small amount of death. Millions of cases, small amount of death.
Their road to the spotlight starts April 22nd, when they called a press conference to share a wide array of conclusions, including a false claim that the flu has a similar death rate compared to coronavirus.
The hypocrisy of it. So I'm going to sum up this part by saying, please stick around for the next installment. If you're a red-blooded American, we're going to go through some stuff that you're not going to like. But at this point, I'm going to sum up and say Mike DeWine is making decisions that affect millions of people based on people that he doesn't name, creating policy that doesn't make any sense, and justifying it with science that he can't explain. Till next time, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless the state of Ohio, and God bless America.